Foundations built on dreams, the morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Blueprint Dreams, casting geometric shadows across the polished concrete floors. Celeste Romano stood before the massive drafting table, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, pencil tucked behind her ear as she studied the architectural plans spread before her. This was her sanctuary, the place where dreams took shape in lines and measurements, where she and Marcus had built something beautiful together. "Coffee's getting cold again," Marcus Thornfield called from across the studio, his voice carrying that familiar note of gentle teasing that had charmed her 6 years ago when they were fresh graduates. Sharing a cramped apartment and impossible dreams. Celeste looked up, catching sight of her business partner and longtime love as he leaned against the reception desk, his sandy hair catching the morning sun. At 32, Marcus still had that boyish smile that made clients trust him instantly. The same smile that had convinced her to take the leap and start their own firm when everyone else called them crazy. "You know, I forget about everything when I'm designing," she replied, walking over to claim the steaming mug. The warmth spread through her fingers as she inhaled the rich aroma. "Besides, the Henderson project is due tomorrow. Mrs. Henderson specifically requested those Tudor revival elements we discussed." Marcus nodded, but she noticed his attention drifting toward his phone as it buzzed with yet another notification. Over the past month, his phone seemed to demand his attention more frequently, though he always dismissed it as client communications or networking opportunities. Their studio occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in the Arts District, a space they had transformed from industrial emptiness into something that reflected both their personalities. Celeste's love for clean lines and natural materials blended seamlessly with Marcus's appreciation for bold statements and unexpected details. Every corner told the story of their partnership, from the custom-built conference table they had designed, together to the gallery wall showcasing their most successful projects. "Speaking of clients," Marcus said, pocketing his phone, "Victoria Ashwood wants to schedule another meeting about the Pinnacle Heights development. She's impressed with our preliminary concepts." Celeste raised an eyebrow. Victoria Ashwood had appeared in their professional orbit 3 weeks ago, like a whirlwind, in designer heels and tailored suits. The real estate developer commanded attention wherever she went. With her platinum blonde hair, sharp green eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no, her project was ambitious, a luxury residential complex that could establish Blueprint Dreams as a major player in high-end development. "That's the third meeting this week," Celeste observed, studying Marcus's expression carefully. "She must really be passionate about the architectural details." "She appreciates quality work," Marcus replied, though something in his tone felt different, more defensive than proud. "This project could change everything for us, Celeste. We're talking about a $15 million development with the potential for more projects if we deliver." Celeste nodded, pushing down the small voice in her head that whispered warnings.
Oh.
Marcus was right about the opportunity.
Oh.
Victoria's project represented the kind of breakthrough they had worked toward for years. Still, something about the woman made Celeste uneasy, though she couldn't quite articulate why. The studio door chimed as their assistant. James arrived with his usual cheerful energy and arms full of coffee shop pastries. "Morning, you two? I brought reinforcements for the Henderson deadline marathon." "You're a lifesaver," Celeste laughed, grateful for the interruption of her swirling thoughts. James had been with them for 2 years, a recent architecture graduate whose enthusiasm reminded her of her own early days in the profession as they settled into their morning routine. Reviewing schedules and discussing project timelines, Celeste felt that familiar contentment that came from being exactly where she belonged. She and Marcus had built Blueprint Dreams with their own hands, their own vision, and their own unwavering belief in each other. Yet as she watched Marcus check his phone again, that small voice of unease grew just a little bit louder. Cracks in the foundation. The rain drummed against the studio windows as Celeste worked alone, sound creating a rhythmic backdrop to her focused silence. It was nearly 9 o'clock on a Thursday evening, and Marcus was at yet another client dinner with Victoria Ashwood. These dinners had become increasingly frequent over the past 2 weeks. Always scheduled at upscale restaurants downtown, it's always running later than expected. Celeste's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. running late again. Victoria wants to discuss the penthouse specifications over dessert. Don't wait up. She stared at the message, noting how he no longer bothered with apologies or promises to make it up to her. 6 months ago, Marcus would have insisted she join them for any important client meeting. Now, he claimed Victoria preferred streamlined communication and that too many voices might complicate the vision. The studio felt different in the evenings now, emptier somehow, despite being filled with their shared accomplishments. Celeste walked past the project boards they had created together, each one representing months of collaboration, late nights, fueled by takeout and shared dreams, celebrations over small victories. The photographs from their firm's 5-year anniversary party caught her eye. Marcus's arm around her waist, both of them beaming as they stood before their first major commercial project. When had he stopped looking at her that way? Her laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender's name made her stomach tighten. Victoria Ashwood. But the email wasn't addressed to her, it was meant for Marcus. It's accidentally sent to the general studio account instead of his personal email. Can't stop thinking about last night. You were right about everything. See you tomorrow for our meeting. Celeste read the message 3 times, each reading making the words more painfully clear. Her hands trembled slightly as she forwarded the email to Marcus's correct address and deleted it from the studio account. For architectural training, kicking in with methodical precision, even as her heart cracked. She thought about confronting him immediately, demanding explanations and truth. But something held her back, perhaps the same instinct that made her double-check measurements before finalizing blueprints. Instead, she began to pay closer attention to details she had previously overlooked. The next morning, Marcus arrived. At the studio later than usual, his hair still damp from a shower and wearing a shirt Celeste didn't recognize expensive. Tailored, not his typical style. "Good morning," she said evenly, not looking up from her computer screen. "How was your dinner meeting?" "Productive," Marcus replied, his tone clipped. "Victoria has some exciting ideas for expanding the project scope. I'm sure she does." Kept her voice neutral, professional. "When is our next team meeting to discuss these expansions?" Marcus paused, coffee mug halfway to his lips. "Actually, Victoria thinks it might be more efficient if I handle the client relationship directly. You know how she is about ... details." The dismissal stung, but Celeste simply nodded. "Of course, I'll focus on the technical drawings then." The following days, she watched their partnership dissolve in small, deliberate ways. Marcus began scheduling meetings without consulting her calendar, making design decisions without her input, and speaking about his vision for projects they had conceived together. He started working from home more frequently, claiming he needed quiet space to think, but she noticed his laptop was always with him, secured with a new password she didn't know. The cruelest part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was how casually Marcus began erasing her contributions. In client presentations, her innovative structural solutions became our team's approach. Her award-winning sustainable design elements were referred to as industry-standard practices. 6 years of partnership reduced to footnotes in his narrative. Celeste found herself staying later at the studio, partly to avoid the awkward silences at home, partly because the familiar space still felt like hers in ways their shared apartment no longer did. She began organizing their files with new attention to detail, carefully cataloging which ideas had originated from which partner, which clients had specifically requested her involvement, which projects bore her signature style. On a particularly quiet Friday evening, as she sat surrounded by portfolios and project histories, Celeste made a decision that surprised her with its clarity. She wasn't going to fight for Marcus. She was going to prepare for life without him. She opened her laptop and began drafting a list. Key clients who had specifically praised her work, talented contractors who respected her vision, the architectural firms in the city that had tried to recruit her over the years. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than hurt and confusion. She felt powerful outside. The rain had stopped, and the city lights twinkled through the studio windows like stars. Celeste Romano had always been good at building things. It was time to build something entirely her own. Her phone buzzed with another late-night text from Marcus, another excuse, another lie wrapped in politeness. This time, she didn't bother reading it all the way through. Instead, she saved her work, gathered her things, and walked out into the clear night air, already designing the blueprints for her future. The confession the morning Marcus finally told her the truth. Celeste was sketching preliminary designs for what would become her masterpiece. She didn't know it yet, but the flowing lines and bold angles emerging on her drafting paper would eventually grace the cover of Architectural Digest. For now, she was simply lost in the meditative process of creation, her pencil moving with unconscious confidence across the vellum. "We need to talk." Marcus's voice cut through the studio's morning quiet like a blade. "Oh." Celeste looked up to find him standing in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his usually perfect hair disheveled. His face carried an expression she had never seen before, guilt mixed with something that looked almost like relief. "About the Morrison project?" she asked, though she already knew from his tone that this conversation would have nothing to do with work about us. Marcus closed the door behind him and walked to the center of the studio, positioning himself near their shared conference table as if he were about to deliver a presentation. About Victoria. Celeste set down her pencil with deliberate care, her architect's mind already calculating structural loads and stress points, though not for any building. "I'm listening." "I've been dishonest with you," Marcus began, his rehearsed tone suggesting he had practiced this speech. "What started as a professional relationship with Victoria has become something more, something I didn't expect or plan for." The words hung in the air between them like toxic fumes. Celeste found herself studying Marcus, as if seeing him for the first time, the way he couldn't quite meet her eyes. How his hands fidgeted with his car keys, the defensive set of his shoulders. "How long?" she asked simply. 6 weeks, the answer came too quickly, suggesting it might have been longer. "Celeste, I never meant for this to happen, but Victoria makes me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. She's ambitious, driven. She sees potential in me that I don't." Celeste's voice remained steady, though she felt something cold settling in her chest. Marcus finally looked at her directly. "You're comfortable, Celeste. We're comfortable. We've built this safe little world together, but Victoria challenges me. She makes me want to be bigger, better, more successful. She sees the man I could become, not just the man I am." The casual cruelty of his words struck her like a physical blow. 6 years of partnership, of building dreams together, reduced to comfortable, as if their love and shared vision were somehow a limitation rather than a foundation.
"So you're
leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm leaving," Marcus confirmed. "Victoria has offered me a partnership in her development company. Real partnership, Celeste, with the kind of projects that could establish me as a major architect. She has connections, resources, opportunities that we couldn't build here together."
not."
Marcus's jaw tightened. "Be honest with yourself. Blueprint Dreams is nice, but it's small, provincial. Victoria operates in a different league entirely. She's introducing me to investors, developers, politicians. Last week we had dinner with the mayor about the waterfront renovation project." Celeste absorbed this information, noting how Marcus had moved from I to we when talking about Victoria. While their own 6-year partnership had somehow become just blueprint dreams in his narrative, what about our clients, our projects? "James depends on this job, Marcus. Mrs. Henderson trusted us with her dream home." "You'll figure it out," Marcus said with stunning callousness. "You're resourceful. Besides, most of our clients came through my networking anyway." That was a lie, and they both knew it. Celeste had cultivated relationships with half their client base through her volunteer work with the Historical Society. Her involvement in the Sustainable Building Initiative, her reputation for innovative problem-solving, but she didn't correct him. There was no point. "When?" she asked. "I'm moving my things out this weekend. Victoria thinks it's better to make a clean break. She's lined up a furnished apartment downtown, closer to her office. Of course, Victoria had opinions about their breakup timeline. Of course, she had already made arrangements." Celeste stood slowly, smoothing her hands over her jeans as she processed the magnitude of what was happening. 6 years of love, trust, and shared dreams, ending in a 10-minute conversation that felt more like a business transaction than the dissolution of a life partnership. "I have something to say," she said finally, her voice carrying a calm that surprised them both. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, perhaps expecting tears or pleas or dramatic gestures. Instead, Celeste smiled, a genuine warm smile that lit up her entire face. "Thank you. Thank you." Marcus looked genuinely confused, for being honest, for not dragging this out or making me wonder what I'd done wrong. She walked toward him, stopping just close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes that she had once found so captivating. "And thank you for showing me exactly who you are when you think you have something better waiting." Something flickered across Marcus's face, uncertainty, perhaps even regret. "I want you to know," Celeste continued, her voice soft but clear, "that I'm going to give you a goodbye you'll never forget." Before he could ask what she meant, Shu had gathered her sketches and walked out of the studio they had built together, leaving Marcus standing alone among the monuments to their shared past, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Blueprints for Revenge, 3 weeks after Marcus's confession. Celeste sat in the corner booth of Meridian Caf, her laptop open and a stack of legal documents spread across the small table. To anyone watching, she appeared to be just another freelancer working from a coffee shop. In reality, she was orchestrating the systematic dismantling of everything Marcus thought he owned. The preliminary paperwork had been surprisingly simple. Years of Marcus's casual dismissal of boring administrative stuff meant that Celeste had handled most of their business documentation herself. She had been meticulous in her record-keeping, a habit that now served her purposes perfectly. Every client contract clearly delineated which partner had initiated the relationship. Every project proposal bore detailed notes about creative origination. Every design element was traceable to its source. Marcus had been half right about one thing: some clients had come through his networking, but he had been spectacularly wrong about which half. "Mrs. Chen," Celeste spoke into her phone, keeping her voice warm and professional. "This is Celeste Romano from Blueprint Dreams. I wanted to personally inform you about some changes to our firm structure. Eleanor Chen had been one of their earliest clients, a retired professor who had commissioned them to design her dream retirement cottage 3 years ago. The project had been Celeste's passion project, a sustainable, accessible home that maximized natural light while respecting the property's historic oak trees. "Oh, Celeste dear," Mrs. Chen's voice was filled with genuine affection. "I was just admiring the skylights you designed. They're even more beautiful than I imagined." "What changes are you referring to?" "I'm establishing my own architectural practice, Phoenix Studios. I wanted to reach out because I know we discussed the possibility of adding the artist's studio to your property. If you're still interested, I'd love to continue working with you." The conversation that followed was typical of the dozens Celeste had been having. Mrs. Chen expressed surprise about the partnership dissolution, immediate concern about working with anyone else, and enthusiasm about following Celeste to her new venture. She also mentioned that her daughter-in-law had been looking for an architect for a commercial renovation project by the time Celeste ended the call. She had retained Mrs. Chen as a client and gained a referral for Phoenix Studios' growing portfolio. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "Coffee meeting went great. Richardson Construction wants to be your preferred contractor. They said they've always wanted to work directly with you anyway." James had been the easiest recruit. When Celeste explained the situation, he hadn't hesitated for even a moment. "Marcus never remembered my birthday," he had said simply. "You helped me through my licensing exam and wrote me the recommendation letter that got me this job in the first place. Where you go, I go." The construction relationships had been almost as straightforward. Dave Richardson, owner of Richardson Construction, had worked on 8 of Blueprint Dreams projects. When Celeste called to inform him about Phoenix Studios, his response had been immediate. "Thank God. Working with you was always a pleasure. Working with Marcus? Let's just say I'm glad I won't have to pretend to laugh at his jokes anymore." Celeste opened her laptop and reviewed the client transition spreadsheet she had been maintaining. Green highlighted names indicated clients who were following her to Phoenix Studios. Yellow represented those still considering their options. Red marked the few who had explicitly chosen to remain with Marcus. The numbers were devastating to Blueprint Dreams' future viability. Marcus didn't know it yet. Celeste had been careful to time her outreach strategically. She contacted clients only after their current projects were completed or at natural transition points, ensuring she maintained her professional ethics while protecting her business. Relationships, her phone rang, displaying Marcus's name. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to his increasingly frantic message. Celeste, we need to talk. Got the Henderson project. Mrs. Henderson says she wants to work exclusively with you. On the final phase, and the Riverside Community Center called asking about your availability for their expansion. I don't understand what's happening here. Call me back. She deleted the message without responding. The truth was, Marcus had never understood the difference between networking and relationship building. He excelled at making impressive first impressions, at selling grand visions over expensive dinners. But Celeste had spent years nurturing genuine connections with clients, contractors, and collaborators. She remembered personal details, followed up on family milestones, delivered on promises even when it meant working weekends. Now those relationships were revealing their true loyalties. Excuse me, are you Celeste Romano? Celeste looked up too. Find a woman in her 50s approaching her table, wearing paint-stained jeans and a hopeful expression. I am, Celeste replied cautiously. I'm Janet Morrison. We met at the Sustainable Building Expo last month. You mentioned that you were working on some innovative approaches to adaptive reuse. I've been trying to reach Blueprint Dreams about a potential project, but I kept getting transferred around. Then I heard through the grapevine that you were starting your own firm. 20 minutes later, Janet Morrison became Phoenix Studios' 7th new client, commissioning the renovation of a 1920s textile factory into affordable artist studios. It was exactly the kind of meaningful, community-focused project that had drawn Celeste to architecture in the first place. As Janet left with Phoenix Studios' information packet, Celeste's phone buzzed with another call from Marcus. This time she answered, "Where are you?" His voice was tight with stress. "We need to discuss what you're doing to our business." "I'm not doing anything to our business, Marcus. Our business ended when you chose Victoria over our partnership. I'm simply starting fresh. By stealing our clients? By maintaining the professional relationships I've cultivated over 6 years?" Celeste's voice remained perfectly calm. "The same relationships you dismissed as provincial 3 weeks ago." There was silence on Marcus's end, broken only by the sound of traffic in the background. "This isn't over," he said finally. "You're absolutely right," Celeste replied, closing her laptop with satisfaction. "It's just beginning." After ending the call, she opened her sketchbook and began drawing. The design that emerged was bold, innovative, and undeniably hers. The first architectural plans that would bear the Phoenix Studios logo. For the first time in months, Celeste Romano was building something entirely her own, and it was going to be magnificent. Rising from the ashes 18 months later, Celeste stood before the gleaming glass facade of the Morrison Arts Complex, watching the morning sun cast geometric patterns across the building's innovative solar panel array. The converted textile factory had become the crown jewel of Phoenix Studios' portfolio, a perfect marriage of historical preservation and cutting-edge sustainable design that had earned recognition from the American Institute of Architects. "The dedication ceremony starts in an hour," James announced, approaching with a tablet full of last-minute details. He wore the confident bearing of Phoenix Studios' new project director, his enthusiasm now matched by hard-earned expertise. "Mayor will be here, along with representatives from 3 other cities interested in similar adaptive reuse projects." Celeste nodded, adjusting the collar of her midnight blue blazer. Today marked more than just the opening of another building. It was the public unveiling of her most personal project. The Morrison Arts Complex contained a special exhibition space. Today's dedication would reveal the installation she had been working on for months. Foundations. A multimedia exploration of what it meant to build, lose, and rebuild. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from clients, colleagues, friends. Mrs. Chen had sent a photograph of her completed cottage, now featured in Better Homes and Gardens. Dave Richardson had forwarded an article from Construction Weekly praising Phoenix Studios' collaborative approach. Even her former professors from architecture school had reached out, proud of their graduates' meteoric rise in the field. Morning flew by in a whirlwind of ribbon-cutting ceremonies, media interviews, and tours of the Morrison Arts Complex. Celeste moved through it all with the grace of someone who had found her true calling. Genuinely excited to share the stories behind each design element, each sustainable innovation, each community partnership that had made the project possible. Local television crews captured her explaining the building's revolutionary water reclamation system to a group of engineering students. Architecture isn't just about creating beautiful spaces, she told them, her eyes bright with passion. It's about solving problems, building community, and creating structures that will serve people for generations. As the afternoon settled, she received word that Phoenix Studios had been selected for the River District Renovation Project, a massive urban redevelopment initiative that would establish her firm among the city's top architectural practices. The commission came with a budget that dwarfed anything Blueprint Dreams had ever handled. Celeste. Eleanor Chen's voice cut through the celebration as the older woman approached with her characteristic energy. I have wonderful news. My daughter-in-law's restaurant renovation was such a success that she's opening 2 more locations. She wants Phoenix Studios to design them both. The ripple effect of quality work and genuine relationships continued to expand Celeste's practice in ways she had never imagined possible. Each satisfied client became an ambassador. Each completed project a testament to her vision and capabilities. Janet Morrison found her near the installation space. Beaming with pride, the city council meeting was incredible, she reported. There, calling the arts complex a model for sustainable urban development. 3 council members asked for your business card. As evening approached, Celeste found herself alone in the exhibition space that housed foundations. The installation was deceptively simpler, a series of transparent architectural models that showed buildings in various stages of construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction. Visitors could walk among them, observing how destruction could become the catalyst for something stronger, more beautiful, more authentic. A placard near the entrance bore a quote she had written, "Every great structure begins with a solid foundation. But sometimes we must clear away what no longer serves us to build something extraordinary in its place." James approached with the final attendance numbers. Over 500 people came through today, he said, with satisfaction, including delegations from 4 different cities and 12 potential clients. Oh, and the Architectural Review Board wants to discuss nominating the complex for the Regional Design Excellence Award. Celeste smiled, feeling the deep contentment that came from work that mattered. Phoenix Studios had grown from her desperate need for independence into something larger. Practice that created meaningful spaces while nurturing the careers of talented young architects like James. Her phone buzzed with one final message of the day. From Dave Richardson, heard through the grapevine that Henderson and Associates is struggling to retain clients. Word is getting around about your success, and people want to work with winners. Congratulations on proving that integrity and talent always rise to the top. She didn't need to know the details of Marcus's current situation. His choices had led him down his own path, just as hers had led her here. There was no satisfaction in anyone else's struggles, only gratitude for the clarity that had allowed her to build something authentically her own. As the last guest departed and the building settled into evening quiet, Celeste stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Lights twinkled in office buildings and homes, each one representing lives, dreams, and stories. Tomorrow, she would begin sketching plans for the River District project, affordable housing mixed with commercial spaces, designed to create community. Rather than simply maximize profit, the foundation was solid. The future stretched ahead like a blank blueprint, waiting for her vision to give it shape. Phoenix Studios wasn't just a business, it was proof that sometimes the most beautiful structures could only be built after everything else had fallen away. Celeste Romano had given herself the greatest gift of all, the opportunity to discover exactly how extraordinary she could become when she stopped trying to fit into someone else's limited vision of her worth. The building around her hummed with quiet efficiency. its sustainable systems working in harmony to create space for artists, dreamers, and builders. It was exactly the kind of legacy she had always wanted to leave behind, not just beautiful architecture, but places where human potential could flourish. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something meaningful. Tonight, she was content to stand in the space she had created, surrounded by the evidence of what was possible. When someone chose to believe in their own foundation,